So I have had Apple Vision Pro and been using it for 7 months now, basically, and actually over 7 months. And one of the first videos I made featuring the device was me taking it right after I bought it and hiking up a giant snowy mountain. And immediately when I started doing that, when I started to prepare for it, I realized I didn't really have a good concept of just how big the thing was. And more importantly, when it comes to travel, how cumbersome that means it is. So if you take a look at my backpack, you've got a MacBook in here. You got an iPad nestled down below with the rest of my stuff. And the giant chamber up here is all Apple Vision Pro. It's like more than half the size of the storage in my bag. And I can usually fit quite a bit of stuff in here. This used to be the bag that I carried most of my camera gear around in. And so part of it is because of this carrying case. I mean, if you look at this thing, look at just how big it actually is when I unzip it. Now, there's a lot of empty space in there by design, right? You can kind of see how it is meant to easily slot in and be carried around quickly to places, but that there leaves a lot of huge empty gaps. So it's not that heavy, relatively speaking. I mean, it's hefty, but it's not like super heavy for the size in terms of the amount of density I'd usually be packing into my bag. And so it ends up taking a ton of space, which is a huge hindrance to me using it more regularly as a travel computer. Now, I've never used it on a plane though, and I've never actually even used it while I've been traveling anywhere other than someplace that it was basically stationary. So I really want to stress test it and see whether the claims about its usage on an airplane match my experience of it.
In Apple Vision Pro, you can also transform your space with environments, like on a plane. You can now watch a movie on a huge screen in a stunning location. And you control just how immersed you want to be.
It'll make sure that those seat backs are in their upright and locked position. Please do make sure that all those carry-on items are completely stowed underneath that seat in front of you so it doesn't cause a tripping hazard in an emergency. Please remain seated with your seatbelt fastened for the remainder of the flight.
Alrighty. What I was hoping to do today was to walk you through kind of the post-game of the experience of using that Apple Vision Pro on the airplane. And I thought I'd start by kind of just describing some things that I noticed in the setup process and some of the things that you saw in that sequence there. And then I'd kind of, we'd close by looking over the actual game tape, so to speak, of me using the headset. And I can kind of describe a couple of things that I noticed about actually using the headset in terms of operating system and software and experience-wise after that. So starting with my experience of just putting it on. I told you that it felt like it took a lot of space in my backpack here and that it was a little bit cumbersome. And it turns out that actually using the thing on the airplane also felt pretty cumbersome. You know, opening this thing up, you know, it is, it opens up flat, but it's not like the super stable on a very small space. And, you know, it covers up pretty much my entire lap. And so kind of just maneuvering and plugging things in and taking things off and trying to like put it on my head without bumping the woman next to me felt a little awkward. And I didn't necessarily anticipate that. And so I felt awkward in just the amount of space that it ended up taking up. I kind of anticipated that I might feel a little awkward just putting it on, like closing myself off from the world, but I didn't anticipate that I would sort of feel like the movement itself of putting it on and the sort of ceremony of getting everything together would be part of that issue. But it was for me. Like, for example, taking off my glasses, putting it on, and like even just like logging in and trying to set up. I mean, little pinches and movements are magnified in Vision OS in the same way that they are on your iPhone, for example. If you like flick your a scroll, it will kind of continue on as if you had some like sort of superhuman ability. But the reality is that pinching and moving your hands around in space and kind of acting like a conductor of the operating system is a lot more, it's just a lot more movement than even using something like a Mac, for example, and typing away, or especially on an iPhone or an iPad, which is just tapping and swiping away. And so I kind of constantly felt like I might be bumping into the woman next to me, or taking up too much space, or like turning my head too quickly and like maybe getting in someone's way, basically. So that was one big issue, and maybe it's just a me thing, but it felt to me, for someone like me, that I was, I could be an actual nuisance, potentially. That's beyond the fact that I also just felt awkward putting on a giant headset in a plane. It's just an attention attractor. People definitely were looking at me and were kind of curious about what I was up to as far as the headset went. The other piece of that, actually, in that kind of awkwardness realm, was that I really felt very closed off once I put the headset on. You know, you have to put on your AirPods unless you want people around you to hear the audio. Your field of view is much smaller when you put that headset on. And if you're turning on an environment, which is pretty much necessary in that space, you are literally closing out the entirety of the world. And now, I think that's how the Apple Vision Pros actually market it in a lot of Apple's ads. Like, you want to close out the space on an airplane. But to me, I felt very awkward because the features like breakthrough, like when a flight attendant and a sort of like, or just any person comes up to you and they're supposed to like sort of shine through, they didn't work super reliably on the plane for me. And even if they did, I would feel sort of like shocked, you know, not knowing that this person was coming up to me right away. And for example, I wouldn't know if the woman next to me needed to go out and use the bathroom unless she like tapped me on the shoulder or something like that. I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't really see anything. And so escaping into that alternate world, while it opened up possibilities for my computing, which we'll see here in a second, it felt also, it just continued to pile onto that sort of anxiety that I was feeling from the amount of space that I was taking, to the amount of space that it took to move, to the look of the thing itself, to the inability for me to see what was going on around me, and everyone else's inability to understand what was going on, which I think speaks sort of volumes about what this product actually is. One of the first videos on this channel, I talked about it not being a VR headset, and, you know, sort of a clickbaity title. But the point being that Apple was aiming for more of an augmented reality device than a virtual reality device. But using that thing on the plane, it really felt like it was a virtual reality device, and that it closed me out from the world rather than added to the world inherently. Beyond that, the things that it did add to my world was an ability to really dig deep on the computing environment that I had. So as far as negatives go, you've heard them, and I kind of want to walk you through what the experience was like using it on the plane here, if that's all right with you. So let's go ahead and take a look. Here is the game tape, so to speak, and I'm just going to go down in the order that I recorded them and kind of walk you through what my experience was in each step along the way. So the first one here, this is when I first put on the headset, and you can see I'm sort of learning to dial in the environment, and even reaching up, for example, there, and sort of spinning the crown. It felt like it was a little awkward, and that I didn't necessarily know what I was doing. You'll also notice, actually, if I rewind there for a second, you'll notice that I was turning on travel mode there, right? And so travel mode is this thing where your headset basically allows you to use it on an airplane, because instead of anchoring to things, I think like the accelerometer, for example, or the gyroscope, or sorry, with the environment, it sort of tries to lock everything in place rather than having your windows sort of slip away out the back of the airplane, which is what happens if you don't turn that on. You can also see I have the screen recording on, and that I am trying to sort of attach things to my AirPods there. And you can see here that I'm really trying to get everything all connected up, because it wasn't clear to me. I couldn't hear anything at the beginning, so it was a little buggy. And keep in mind, I'm running visionOS 2 here, and so there's probably a few bugs that you might notice. But for the most part, it was a pretty standard visionOS experience from the beginning. So I decided that I wanted to try and open up some of the things that I downloaded. I forgot that I hadn't downloaded anything on Macs there. And instead, I started to watch The Godfather Part 2. And you'll see here in a second that I dial into this environment, and that I actually go in and try to start watching it in the cinema mode. But I immediately felt sort of, oh, hello. I immediately felt sort of like out of place in the environment. And I felt sort of shocked. Now, you can't see it here because of the recording capabilities. There's a DRM, and so it doesn't let you watch the actual movies themselves. But take my word for it that I felt displaced in that space, and that I sort of felt like it was jarring to be in that cinema mode. So I forget if I do it here, but I did try and reposition things in the environment, which again, felt necessary here. You'll notice because the environment sort of makes the space feel virtually bigger, whereas in the beginning, it would feel like the screen was right in front of you, the same way that your computer would be. So the advantage being that it did open things up quite a bit here, but the disadvantage being that it blocked me out from the real world. And so you can see here, I kind of continue toying with the space. I end up deciding that watching a movie probably is not the move. And then actually what I want to do is kind of what I do on planes in the first place, which is some work. So that's the second clip here. So here, I'm opening up my backpack again and slipping out my computer, which again felt like I was kind of like using a bunch of space, and like I felt like I was maneuvering a lot in a very small area with all of those kind of anxieties and awkwardness that I felt before. And I set it up, and I pull up the Mac Virtual Display, and in the plane, it pops right up there. And I was actually, this moment right here, by the way, this moment was one where it felt pretty magical. I'm not gonna lie. To have a full, like, virtual display that is bigger than my at-home monitor, actually, believe it or not, that at-home monitor over there, it felt magical to have it floating out in front of me. And this was one of the few moments that really made me feel like, okay, there is something to this here. And so you'll see what I do is I open up a couple of things here. For example, this board meeting for the school district that I follow and that I'm nearby in. And I actually end up airdropping it to my Apple Vision Pro because I want to start taking notes on it. And you'll see if I fast forward here, actually it may be in the next one. Yeah, you'll see that the airdrop completes, and that I can open it up. So I go and open up that board meeting. And you can see how, even in this space, if I don't have that environment dialed in, it feels sort of very cramped up. Like this window feels like it's right in front of the seat in front of me. So it doesn't feel that big, but it also feels like it is kind of like right up against my eyes almost. Then, you know, I kind of continue on and I try and get things positioned. I open up a note, and then I use the continuity feature and use my Mac's keyboard to kind of continue taking notes. And I I tried this for a few minutes, by the way, and it works okay. I start going through, but even this isn't ideal. And you'll notice that actually in the next clip here, I've just switched back to my Mac keyboard. And so, again, I think that this is a moment that it feels very telling about the device, in that I tend to think that the Apple Vision Pro is a device that's meant for developers. And one of the most important features of the Apple Vision Pro for those developers is the ability to use Mac Virtual Display. The UI of the Apple Vision Pro itself, outside of the Mac Virtual Display, is pretty chunky and pretty clunky, are the two words that I would use, in that it feels almost more like you're dealing with an Apple TV than you are with an iPad or an iPhone, and especially a Mac. There's just not a lot of information density in the device, and so apps that want to be sort of information dense, like productivity apps, like note-taking apps, like fine scrubbing in a long video, just don't really fit the platform very well. And so me reverting back to a, literally just using my Mac here, is indicative of the broader platform issues that I think the Apple Vision Pro will kind of face going forward. And so you can see here, I continue taking notes, and really, I just kind of finish up here. I think in this last one, there's not much that happens other than me closing out and kind of finishing up. And so that was my experience using it on the plane. It sort of boils down to very simple things. And while it was nice to have that big display out in front of me, I did edit a video for a little bit. I did work on a spreadsheet a little bit. It was good to have some privacy of what was on my display, but it didn't feel like it was necessarily worth the song and dance of putting the whole thing on and being concerned about the people around me and like taking up a bunch of space and like worrying about 2 batteries instead of 1. Like I mostly, for the most part, could have just used my MacBook or could have just used my iPad and just used them as regular laptops or tablets instead of having to hook them up to the Apple Vision Pro. Now, I know that one of the big features that is touted about using Apple Vision Pro on a plane is to watch a movie. And it just wasn't a great experience for me because of all the things I talked about at the beginning of this little rant here. It just felt like I was sort of taken out of the environment that I wanted to be in. And, you know, maybe I'm not the average person here. I don't know about you, but I actually enjoy being on an airplane and kind of seeing the sights and kind of seeing what's going on. And, you know, I love putting on headphones. I don't love the noise in the background of an airplane, just sort of raw dogging it, so to speak. But I do enjoy the process of traveling. And so again, for me, it just didn't feel like there was a lot there. And so I continue to think about this Apple Vision Pro here, and I think about it as a desktop device, which is sort of interesting. It feels like it should be something that's portable. It comes in this portable travel case that I bought, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it is a device that's designed for traveling, right? A laptop is a better computer on the road, in my opinion. An iPad is a much better computer on the road, in my opinion. And even the iPhone itself is a much better computer on the road, in my opinion. It just feels like I did not get a lot for my return on investment in space, in psychological awkwardness that I had to endure, in the setup process, and certainly in cost in terms of using it on the airplane. Whereas when I use my other devices, it feels sort of natural to just slip it out of my bag, start working with it, and kind of continue on. And so what I think that means for this device in the future is that, you know, when this is the first version of the Apple Vision line, and that when we see something like an Apple Vision Air, something that's smaller and slimmer, something that feels less cumbersome and less all-encompassing, something with a better field of view, it may become a better plane device as that goes on. But as it stands, the Apple Vision Pro is a nice aspirational plane device, but is not the greatest plane experience, which is a little disappointing to me. And so bottom line, I don't think I'm going to be traveling with this thing very much anymore. I sort of, there's a reason I haven't used it on a plane, and all of my fears were confirmed, and some new downsides were sort of revealed to me for not a lot of upside in the end. And, you know, next time, the top half of my bag will probably be filled with other things, maybe a book or two, or, you know, I could just lose a couple of pounds of weight on my back for the remainder of my trip. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'm curious if you've got an Apple Vision Pro, whether you've enjoyed it on a plane before, and if you don't have one or you haven't used one on a plane before, whether you thought of it maybe as a good travel device. Anyways, let me know in the comments. I've been loving some of the responses I've gotten to the last video, and this video kind of bookends that little trip there. And I'm excited to be talking about Apple Vision Pro again on this channel, which is sort of the core of how this channel began. Expect a review of the Apple Vision Pro coming soon. I know, 8 months, I think, with the Apple Vision Pro coming up. And thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.